Okay, call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Dave.
Here.
Otis.
Here.
Yancy. Chris.
Here.
Sally.
Here.
Tor.
Here.
Richard.
Okay, do we have any amendments to the agenda for today's meeting? Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Actually, could you, excuse me, sorry.
Yes.
Could you just add on staff comments under B, presentation of proposed zoning map?
Presentation of proposed zoning? Okay. Do we have a motion to accept the agenda as amended? So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Do we have any amendments to the minutes from the previous meeting on August 14th? Hearing none, do we have a
I
motion
just
to...
have one
Yeah.
clarification, I guess. I noticed that on, I guess it's on page 4 here, on 7A, it just says including a 17 overhang limit on the property line. And so I think what we said is a 5-foot setback and then 16 inches from that setback towards the property line. And so I don't know if that's I thought it was a little bit different than what I thought. I guess the dark bolded section there.
Yeah.
I don't know if it makes a difference or if it's...
Mr. Chairman, so you're just clarifying that the setback is 5 feet from the property line, and then it's a 16-inch from that,
Yeah.
toward the property line of that, from that 5 feet?
That's what
Yeah.
I thought.
Yeah, okay.
I was clarifying with everyone else.
So we can make that amendment?
Yeah,
Is that-
motion.
so that's what we had in there is that just an error in the recording, or is it, do we need to make a motion on that?
I would make a motion to amend the minutes.
Okay. Thank you. Do we have a motion to amend the minutes to
Yeah.
include that 5-foot?
Yeah, I have a motion then to amend the minutes to include, it's a 5-foot setback with a 16-inch overhang from the setback towards the property line.
Yeah, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay.
Good job catching that.
Thank you. Do we have any public comments that are not related to the public hearing or consent calendar that are within the borough's jurisdiction? Hearing none, let's move on to consent calendar. We have no items on the consent calendar this meeting. So we'll move on to the public hearing items. We have a consideration of an application from Tasha Frazee and Bruce Frazee Trust for subdivision at 106 Konings Lane. Do we have any public testimony on this? Commission discussion?
Yes.
My only thing was, I was glad to see in here, the distance from the fire hydrant, that, yeah, that should definitely be included.
Yeah.
As I see it is.
Yeah.
Because 300 to 400 feet is too far.
Mr. Chairman, did you
Yeah.
close the public hearing already? Or,
No, we haven't closed.
okay. I was just going to say, when you do, you need to make a motion before the commission starts discussing the item.
Okay. Do we have a motion to approve?
So move.
So, yeah.
Okay, discussion?
Motion to approve what is my
So
question?
I'll move to approve preliminary plat for Creekside Meadow subdivision with the findings of fact conditions stated in the staff report.
Thank you. We have a second?
Second.
Okay. Discussion.
Okay, just my comment, I was glad to see that I don't know, when are we going to find out next time the fire marshal comes into town, or is this something we'll send to him?
It was the local fire marshal who looks at that and looked at the
Okay.
distances, recommends that there be a hydrant closer, because they're
Okay.
at the outside limits there. I believe it was Sandy Beach is the nearest hydrant.
Right.
And so if they came up 14th Street, then down Koenigsegg and back into the subdivision, they're well past their 400 feet or something to that effect. So
Then who pays for that? Just,
the developer will have to pay for it.
okay.
Yeah, if anything, this just seems like notice that they're thinking about doing it, and they haven't maybe figured out all the details yet. But
Yeah, they'll have to go through the engineering phase and everything now. After they get the preliminary approval, then they'll start thinking some more serious planning and for approval.
Then, I have another question on the easement. How standard is that? Is that pretty standard? You know, for the access to the back lot, does that create problems in the future, or?
Certainly not the first time.
Okay.
40-foot wide easement should be adequate.
I don't really see an alternative either.
Yeah.
No, I mean, I agree. And then, so when that easement is platted, like it is now, then that'll get protection for the people that have lot 2CV and going forward in the future.
Yeah, that gives them,
Right.
that gives them easement for access and for utilities to cross that property. It seems pretty straightforward to me,
Okay.
so. Any other discussion, comments?
It looked to me like there was a shed or something in the way of that easement. It looked kind of temporary, though.
Yeah.
If that shed is on Borough platted road, it's going to have to be relocated. Yes?
My name is Rick Brown. I'm the land surveyor, and the shed is actually going to be moved
Okay,
further south, away from the road.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Karen? Can we do a roll call?
Dave?
Yes.
Tor?
Yes.
Shelley?
Yes.
Chris?
Yes.
Otis?
Yes.
Anybody?
5 for 5.
Okay. Moving on to non-agenda items. Any commissioner comments?
I just have a question of Liz, and maybe she's going to address it later. What's the status with the lawyer's revision of our code review? or update?
We just finished, so we're in the process of posting it online and making books like we did for you before for the Assembly. And I'm hoping to get it present it to the Assembly at their next meeting for them to start looking at, when they want to take it up under consideration. And I'll send you guys the link to access it.
Okay. Can you give us a summary of what changes, if anything, the lawyer made, or?
No, I can't.
You can't?
I think the major thing is it's slightly restructured. There's where there used to be multiple processes, she eliminated that and consolidated it all into one single review process for all applications. And so it really streamlined that. Part of that two-process thing is because that's the way the template was, and then I took a bunch of stuff out, and then we realized that I'd taken so much out from the original document that it really wasn't necessary to do two. We could just consolidate it as one, and that would work, still achieve the same basic goal, which is less review for simple things and more review for more complicated things. So a lot of it was that, and the rest of it is just really clarifying language in terms of what does this actually mean, and making sure that everything was consistent throughout, and rewriting it so that it met the Alaska Administrative Code standards, so that it was written in that kind of format. And then there's a couple of additions. I think probably the most notable is we added in vacation rental dwellings, which would be basically a bed and breakfast that isn't owner occupied, because she wouldn't let me define bed and breakfast as either owner occupied or not occupied, so I had to create a whole nother section for vacation rental. But it has exactly the same standards as a bed and breakfast. It's just bed and breakfast, not owner occupied. And it's its own thing. The policy and amendments that you all made are all intact. There's a few things that she had questions on, and I'll bring those back to you. Like, I think you added in at some point major automotive repair services, and you didn't define what major meant. And she said if you don't define it, she's going to take it out. So at some point, you need to define that.
Okay.
Which I think we mentioned at the time that really wasn't going to work that way, just having it in there like that. And then there's another numerical number, percentage number that you put in that we need to get clarification on. But as far as the major thing, it's just major changes in the structure of the processes and how those got kind of streamlined into one process where it was more two processes is the big thing. And then, and notice requirements all were made consistent throughout, so we don't have variation depending on the type of application. It's always the same amount of days for the public notice, the same people noticed, same appeal processes, and everything made consistent throughout, which will make it a lot easier on our end to, this is the process that we follow for everything, regardless of what we're doing. The other thing was whether we had to specify, what type of review for each item, and we ended up landing on, we're going to assume it's this type review unless it's specified otherwise in the actual code. So everything's kind of a basic type 1 review, which is just an administrative review, unless it specifies otherwise or unless you need some kind of special permit. And that had to be clarified throughout and made sure it was consistent throughout the entire document. So mostly things that are the nuts and bolts behind the scenes kind of things that takes a long time to ferret out and make sure you've done it in every place. And then when you made it inconsistent someplace, you had to go back and do it again to make it consistent. So I think that's basically it. So it's substantially different in structural, but policy-wise, it's consistent with what you saw before.
Thank you. Any more questions or comments? Okay, let's move on to staff comments. And I will turn this over to Joe and Liz.
And so as we requested at the last meeting, we're going to give you an update on the Frederick Drive situation out with Mr. Whitney's property. Since the last meeting, as I said, he does have a foundation permit in hand. I issued an after-the-fact permit to him. He has come in with a full set of architecturally drawn plans, professionally drawn plans for the house. And he came in, presented those to me, and we talked about it, and he said that he's buttoning it up for the winter. There will be nobody staying there at all this winter. So if anybody's prowling up there, they don't have his permission. And he will start up again as soon as the snow's gone. He's got reeds on the hook to do his work there, and he said in April. And so that's his plan. What he told me. So, but they said that's I got to take him on his word. That's what he said he was going to do. So
Okay.
plans look good.
Seems like a rather large foundation that he's put in.
It's a good size building. You know, it's gonna. I forget what the breakdown is for the storage as opposed to the living area. I think it's about. I don't remember.
Yes, Ellie.
Is he sincerely going to get this done in 3 months? April, May, June? His cutoff was July 1st.
I know.
I mean, he told us he had a really aggressive plan starting this summer in July, and that he'd be done by July next year.
Yes, that's what he said. I can't. It could be done if you got a crew in there of, maybe half a dozen men, women, and children, whatever. Yeah, I'm sorry. And aggressively attacked it as a project. If it's just it'll be very difficult if it's just him and one other person or something like that. That's the intent. So I don't know. It depends on what the manpower is to be able to complete it in that period of time.
Mr. Chair, so he has a plan. Do we have a plan if he doesn't meet the variance criteria by July 1?
Well, he'll be coming before us to ask for an extension of the variance, and at that point and at that point in time, we have the testimony that's on the record that we'll be reviewing, and we'll make a decision at that time. So.
Right now, you just have what you have in hand. What said it was going to do, what your rules stated are, and you just have to let it play out, I guess.
So that'll probably be coming up in, he's got till July 1st. It'll probably be at our July meeting that we'd be reviewing that.
Needs to provide something in advance.
True, yeah. It states that if he is going to request anything, he's not there. It has the request has to be in hand before the expiration date.
Expiration date, so then we'd be reviewing at the June meeting.
June meeting, yeah.
So.
Yeah, well, if it was the latter, if you brought the request in the latter part of June, after your June meeting, it would be heard at the July meeting.
Yeah, So it's going to be sometime right around one of those meetings that,
That would be my
yeah,
guess.
okay.
Should have a pretty good idea in June where he stands as far as
Yeah.
if it's going to make it or not.
All right. And you, Liz, you have a presentation on the proposed zoning? Yes.
Did we get a chance to comment at all?
When we come back, when it comes up for review, there'll be a chance for you to comment at that time.
Can I ask a
Notified before, and
Will we be notified?
You should be notified, yes.
And also, does he have his building permit?
How about
Is it?
if we're going to have a public discussion, should we have him step up?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a foundation permit for that foundation.
The building owner's trailer? The subfloor on top of the high?
How about, do you mind stepping up to the mic? Do you mind stepping up to the mic?
Yes.
He's got a foundation
Do you
permit.
mind stepping up to the mic and we can have a public discussion?
Not that
my name's Bruce Cady, and the structure over his trailers is bigger than my house.
Excuse me.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
this is complete chaos. You have to have one person at a
One
time.
person at a time, please. and-
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. I got some comments. I want to know why the public has to be complainers when it's not zoned for it. We shouldn't have to come in and complain. I don't like complaining. Now my neighbor hates my guts because I'm complaining. Joe should be out there. Stop. He shouldn't have let him build the structure over his trailers and stuff. I don't understand how it got this far. It's over. He came here and got his variance after he finished building the structure over his trailer. It took him about a week to do the structure. Should take him about a week to tear it down. I don't see the problem. He got no permit for it.
Well, Joe is one guy, and he doesn't know everything that's going on everywhere in the world unless somebody tells
I grew up in
him.
Lake Tahoe, and the building inspectors came around and shut us down if we didn't have right permits and stuff, and I don't know what the problem is in Petersburg. I've worked in Juneau. It's the same thing. If you don't have the permits, the building department's supposed to come and do their job and enforce zoning and planning and make sure that he's got a single-family structure instead of a multiple-family structure. I mean, why should I have to complain? Why is it the people, it seems to me the people getting a variance should have to come in with acceptance from everybody, and I shouldn't have to come and complain.
But I don't think you're complaining, you're just letting us know, like, we can't know
Well,
everything.
we said a complainer, so basically we're complainers.
No, I think it's information that we didn't know, is basically what it comes down to, so it's good.
I don't know. Like I say, both my brother and I, my dad was a contractor in the 70s. We've gone through all this, and everything that happens in this town is just like, and that's why I'm leaving here just going, we've wasted our time. It's been a waste of time, and that stuff's going to be there forever, and I don't know what else to say except that the planning and zoning is God, and when they decide, we can't do nothing about it. And what you have done is you're driving our property values down, so you can expect property values to drop in Frederick Point. So you're letting happen.
But your request is that he got a building permit beforehand, basically.
Yeah, you should have a building permit.
We agree with you. We agree with you on that, for sure. But at this point, what can we change?
Well, he's in violation of his variance by having a building without a building permit over his trailers. That you gave him a variance for one trailer, there's two trailers, and a building that's bigger than my house. Have you even been out there to look at it?
Yeah.
That thing's bigger than my house, has more square feet than my house does, so you don't have to have a building permit for that? That's my question. I just don't understand where you guys don't see that. You know, I mean, it's logic to me, isn't it? I mean, he built a complete structure without a permit.
Joe,
Yes, sir.
what are the rules concerning structures?
What else is there?
When he puts the trailer out there with the conditional use permit,
But what about the roof over the trailers?
there's a roof trusses on top of the trailer, yes.
And is that would require a permit, or?
For a temporary structure like that, it was supposed to be down in a year.
Temporary permit for the last forever. When I'm dead, I'll still be there.
My understanding, Joe, is if he doesn't have a habitable dwelling, have a certificate of occupancy by July 1, then we can request that he remove the temporary, we can remove his permit for the temporary dwellings, correct?
Then he's in violation of the conditional use permit.
Okay, so,
For the variance, I mean.
yeah, so basically there's,
Conditional use permit, yes.
yeah, there's basically nothing we can do until July 1.
That's what I say, there's nothing
this
we
point.
can do either. I just
Yeah.
am frustrated that Petersburg
I'm just-
is not even close to in line with uniform building codes or anything they've done with building. Since I've been, hey, this building has a leaky roof. Right on the landing, on the stairs coming up, there's a leak in the roof when it rains, and it jerked on Mark's head the last time we came here. Boop, right on the top of his head, we stepped back and there's a jerk of water there. That's the way Petersburg operates. I'm sorry.
I can say for sure is we'll make sure that you're notified next time we're talking about this discussion in June or July.
Good thing, because
Either way.
the judges don't want me to say it, but that's Petersburg.
Moving on to the presentation of proposed zoning. Liz?
Hopefully, it'll work here. If not, it's going to be really short.
It's over on this side.
Thanks. I'm going to take everything out. Okay, so this is what I'm going to propose for you all to consider for the new boundaries for zoning under the new code. So it has the new names for all the different districts. This map will be online for anyone to look at. And I'm not going to move it just now, but again, I'll show you because I'm afraid it's going to disappear on us if I mess with it. So temporarily, this is what you're going to see, but then at the end, when I'm finished talking, I'll try and make it do its magic, and then you can see how it works. The key parts of this, go up here and make it work. If you recollect our current zoning map, all of this up here, all of this light yellow land is actually currently single-family residential. And that corresponds pretty closely to what's low-density residential in the new code. So the first thing I did was just take each of our existing districts and move it into its corresponding district under the new code. So all single-family residential went into low-density residential. Single-family mobile home park, multifamily, all went into high-density residential. Industrial went into industrial. Commercial 1 went into downtown commercial. Public use went into public use. So after I did all of that jazz, then I went back and looked at specific things that we had talked about previously that maybe we wanted to change. For instance, this is that downtown residential area that was single-family residential, and I moved that into medium density, right? We set up those smaller lot sizes and the smaller setbacks for that, specifically for that area. So I switched them into medium density residential. Down here, this is Hagen Drive right south here. There's a mobile home park. Currently, that's commercially zoned. So I moved that into high-density residential, so it's consistent with the neighboring blocks and also with the current use of it. All of this was already public use all along here. This is a conservation easement that was set up for the fire hall when the wetlands got built. So I took it out of public use and put it into open space because we can't develop it anyway. So that's a more appropriate district. In here, you'll see this bright red is downtown commercial, which was commercial 1 zoning. There's also some commercial 1 out here where Hammer Wecon was. And I actually moved that into general commercial, which is more appropriate for auto-centric, where you're driving to a location, where the downtown commercial is better for more of a walking retail area. So everything outside of this core is general commercial, and I just changed this into downtown commercial. In our SLU areas, these were all zoned residential or commercial. The water, the tidelands where actually the tide comes in. Wherever it's publicly owned, I turned that into open space, thinking we probably, as a borough, are not going to build in the middle of Hammer Slough. So just recognize that those are areas that we aren't likely to build in, and we have an aesthetic reason as well to keep that open space. Moving down into here, these are pretty much either staying as they were commercial or industrial, residential, and then high-density residential, which is currently existing here and here. Then on the industrial side, this is all industrial, all this blue, and that's going into waterfront industrial, basically where there's existing waterfront infrastructure or potential for waterfront infrastructure. I put it into that waterfront industrial zone. The other probably notable thing is this line here is the airport boundary line. And we had these huge gaps, like where we just didn't have any zoning whatsoever. And so a lot of these gap areas I put into development reserve, which is just a holding district until you decide what you want to do with it. So not only the airport area, but also all the land that we are potentially going to have conveyed to us from the state that's within Service Area 1. I put all into that holding district, kind of claiming it as ours until the paperwork catches up, I suppose. And then there's a couple of other spots like there's a few places that were public use, which really weren't being used for anything, and it was kind of a holding spot, it seemingly, for open space. And so I moved a couple of those into open space, where we actually have some kind of built structure, public structure, that stayed in public facilities. So you'll see, municipal building, Forest Service, Power and Light, the library, the hospital, the museum, the ballpark, school. Those were all existing public use, and they got switched into what's called public facilities. And that's kind of more of a, it's not just open space, it's actually something that's built, that it's, a utility or some sort of public infrastructure. And then as you move the map down further south, there's places that are potential for new public facilities, like out in Scout Bay, where there might be a pole yard someday or a fire station or something like that, and there's a few pieces out in that direction. Anything that's rural residential, stayed rural residential also, except for one parcel that was on Sandy Beach Road, which I don't know why it's rural residential, so I put that into low density. They have services, there's no reason why not. And conversely, there's a subdivision out the road, Sunset Lane, that got rezoned as single family, but it's outside of the water and sewer service area. So I put that into rural residential. They have some pretty small lots now, and I don't think they should create any smaller lots that exist for that area without having water and sewer. And then light industrial, when I move this down, you'll see I think there's 3 places, Scalabay Loop Road, and then just north and south, the waterfront just north and south of Scalabay, which is pretty heavily industrial. Heavily residential, but it's zoned industrial. I'll show you that if it stays with us. I'll show you that on the map. But I think there's maybe 3 areas. Those 2, and then Cornelius, which is the other one that we all talked about, turning that into Upper Cornelius into light industrial. That was it.
How about the road from Rockies Marine out?
That's industrial.
Okay, it's right now.
It's industrial and it stays industrial, yeah. I think that Lions Road we had a few people come in and talk to us about that one, yeah.
Yeah,
And
Mike
that's
Getcher.
gonna change. Yeah,
Yeah,
That's the one that the easement's awful narrow on, right?
yeah.
Okay.
yeah. I think they want to do a marijuana grow in there.
I heard something about that. So if this actually works, we'll see this. Scalabay area.
You don't have purple on your key, but it's obviously public facility, or what is it? What are you considering
It's
it?
industrial.
Okay,
I know the color's not particularly bright on the projector, but, so, here's Scalabay Loop, right? Hungerford Hill. This is all industrial now, and these residential pockets are currently existing, so it pretty much stays as it is. Here's Bayview, which is residential, and that just went to low-density residential. Here's that Cornelius light industrial stretch right here. This used to be residential, but you can see how it's sandwiched right in between 2 industrial parcels, and really it
Yeah.
kind of has that mostly warehouse mix, and so it didn't seem to quite fit in with residential. But in light industrial, you can have that mix of uses. Light industrial here, which is predominantly residential right here. This is all industrial. It stays industrial. There's this waterfront. This is Turnaround. This is the old Reed's property. That all stays industrial. And this is Scalabay Loop on the water side, which is predominantly residential right now. And so it would be rezoned into light industrial, which allows for those residential uses. And then a lot of this out here is currently unzoned, and we move that into industrial, which seems to fit with that area. Accessory, that which is what it is. So,
I believe we did try and change part of that.
yeah,
Unsuccessfully.
unsuccessfully. So why go there
Right.
again, really? So on this online map, what I thought was the cool thing is you can just sort of follow the numbers down here. So you can click on why change, and it has the goals of the rezone and why we're doing it. I'll click on it at the end. I have no confidence, right, in this to work. Then you can click on this one, and it'll actually put all the lot lines on. So you can just go to your property, and then you can click on your lot, and it'll tell you what your current zoning is and what the proposed zoning is. And then this one, let's just try it. Ta-da! So this one is a list of the changes that I just kind of went through with you on what the major changes are in residential. And so, for example, this one is the one about the medium density. And if you click on here, say, magically did not work. But if it worked, what it would do is just highlight that area and that's the only thing you would see. So what you can do is go through and actually just see the places that aren't being changed, and just those lots. So it kind of gives you a little story of, here are the highlights of what we're changing in residential, and you can look at each one individually, and the same thing for the industrial. And then it goes through all the different districts and kind of highlights on the map what actually is happening and which lots are affected. So it's a little bit easier than trying to see the changes in the entire map with all the different colors. You know, if you don't have it memorized, you don't always notice what was and what is, and this way it just really isolates just the major changes. I knew it was going to happen if I clicked, it would disappear on us. I know.
Is that just a glitch because it's on here? Or?
Well, I don't know why, because it just went downstairs, and I don't know if I don't have a good, if the connection that I thought was a connection isn't really a connection. Could be. And here's kind of the overview. Sandy Beach stays as it was zoned last time. It just goes into the new categories, but otherwise remains. This, for instance, is where the reservoir is. I just put that into public facilities, and the same thing with the one for Cabot Creek, because those are currently all unzoned. And then you can see all that gray there, which is a lot of this here, like this, and some of this, and all of this. This part here is all selected under the state selection, and so those are in that reserve category. These are also, some of this over here was also unzoned. I think mental health is considering selling a parcel over here at a rock pit, and in order for them to subdivide it, it needs to be zoned. So I just went ahead knowing that at some point they're going to want to do that, so we just went ahead and put it into that category so that we can get ahead of the game on not having to rezone it when that proposal comes up. So that's kind of it in a nutshell. And I'll send you guys the link to this so you can play with it. And then I'm actually working with the attorney right now to see what type of public notice we need to provide, just to let everyone know that they're being proposed for rezoning, regardless of whether it's just from single family to low density or if it's something more substantial, and what that needs to look like. And then I wanted to include in that notice when they'd have an opportunity to come and talk to the commission about it before it went to the assembly, because I think you guys should probably weigh in on those boundaries and gather public input before it actually hits the assembly. I don't know if you want to do a similar thing where we did last time, where we had a couple of public hearings and then pulled together all the amendments and then just did one third meeting with all the amendments and just went through all of those that we collected from the public, as well as things that just got proposed by the commission. Or if you want to do a different type of process. But it'd be nice to sort of have a general schedule to put out for people to get a sense of, hey, this is coming and we need to weigh in. This map also is going to be adopted by ordinance, so they'd also have an opportunity at the assembly level to participate as well.
My question is, don't we have to have the assembly sign off on the revisions, the code first before the map? I mean, that's kind of like the...
Yes and no. I mean, it's in a way, it's the major complaint I thought we heard was that there was no map to go with the code.
I mean, wouldn't it be better just to do it as one package?
Well, obviously originally I thought no, but but since then, again, that I thought was the major complaint from people was that they couldn't
Right.
see the map.
Right,
So
yeah, they want to visualize it,
They
so.
want to visualize it, so
I mean,
there
we could take public comment on the map, but the changes are meaningless if the code's not passed by the assembly.
Yeah.
So, it seems like we'd be doing
Well, that's
a
what
disservice.
that was my logic originally. was
Yeah, right.
There's no point in doing this unless it actually passes. But it would have to be, so then we would have this code, but we have no districts, right? And 6 months are going to go by before we get the map.
So maybe we should just do it all in one swoop.
Well, I thought if you guys wanted to start doing this, eventually it would, let's say it's 3 meetings of the commission.
Yeah, but wouldn't it be better just send it all to the assembly and for C1?
They're not going to take it up right away.
Yeah, I understand that. I understand that. But I mean, it just seems like we're wasting our time.
Well, we might
And the
have
public.
already, yeah,
First, we don't even know if they want to revise the code.
right.
And without a map, they might be more reluctant to revise the code, whereas if they can see the map and they can see what we're proposing, then it might be easier for the assembly also to visualize what's going on.
Well, the problem that we're going to run into at some point is having a code, but we don't have any land in the districts or in the code.
I understand that. I understand that. But I mean,
A bit of a chicken and the egg thing.
yeah, it seems like we need to do them both at the same time and then then if the assembly has issues and wants us to take it up in further detail, then we can do that. But I'd rather see them get a whack at it first, because,
That code.
yeah,
So it's going to
and,
be at least, I would say it's going to be a few months before they actually take it up.
yeah, no, I understand.
So then it'll be another couple, 3 months before they
Yeah.
pick up the map, and then it'll be another month and a half or 2 months before they can pass the map.
Yeah, I
And
understand.
we're talking next summer, maybe,
Yeah, I understand.
Yeah.
But I mean, my fear is,
that we do all this and for not.
yeah,
Well, that was my original fear too, I get it.
okay. So I mean, nothing's set in stone. The assembly has the power and the authority to change all this. They have the power and authority that if they got questions about it, then we could just let them know that if they want us to take public comment on it, we're willing to do that and report back to them. We can do whatever they want us to do. But I'd like to see them take a crack at this thing first before we get everybody all excited about a new map. Because if we go out there and we say,
So lay out the process for me so that it
Okay.
makes sense.
yes, okay.
It doesn't right now.
Okay, so what we do is we present, this is a model map, it's not the final map, but this is a proposed map that could be changed, but first we have to, the assembly has to approve the code, because there's no point in having low-density, high-density residential districts unless they pass the code first,
Or simultaneously.
or simultaneously. So what this is a template, just a template. It's nothing set in stone, but this is our version of how it should be, of how it could be applied. In other words, what we've done is we've taken the code that we worked so long on, and now we've put it on a visual that people can see. I'd rather do that process and have people come in here and say, well, how come my lot's here and it's not here? How come I'm high density and not low density? Because that might be meaningless if the assembly doesn't approve the code revision anyway. They might just say, no, we don't like all of this, let's go back and we're just going to keep it the way it is. So why get everybody excited until we do that process?
Because the other end of it is if you adopt the code and you don't have the map to go with it, then that's also meaningless.
No, but you do it together in one process.
So then we would have to start now with the planning commission so that the planning commission can catch up and push the map to the assembly in time for it to go simultaneously to the assembly. Otherwise, they're going to pass the code and they'll leave it.
When is the assembly going to start
I don't know.
having hearings on that?
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't see why.
No, I get what you're saying, but that's the other side of the chicken and the egg situation.
Yes. Yeah. I mean,
I don't see it as that, there's not that many changes in the map. So I would say let's go ahead and start doing the public hearing process on the map. And even if, I don't mind putting the effort in doing the public hearings, saying that if the Borough Assembly doesn't accept the code, the map goes nowhere. But, I mean, it's nothing, because we go back to the old map. If they don't accept the code, this map is meaningless. So, but we may as well get it done. And that way, if the Borough Assembly does accept the new code, then the map is ready. And they can say, okay, yeah, we're going to accept the map, and then we just transitioned over. That makes more sense to me than holding off or trying to make it coordinated. And if they want to take it up all at once, they can. If we finished our process and the map's ready, I mean...
Yeah, I think we should just plan like they're going to accept a new, planning code.
Well, I think you're making an assumption that...
I agree, but I mean, you can't second guess. I mean, we should just plan that way, line everything up, and hope, that everything just goes through.
Yeah, and if they don't accept it, if we put the effort in, then,
Okay, well, politically, I'm afraid we're making a mistake, because that will get people excited.
It will.
And versus having a very thick code that the Assembly has to go through, we're not getting excited, because they don't know how it's going to apply. So, we let the Assembly first. I mean, this is just my opinion. I don't have a problem doing all this. I mean,
no, and that was my original
thought
process too.
Yeah. Let's do let's see whether the council or the Assembly wants to update the code. Okay, they want to update the code. Fine. We can present this map so they have a visual and just say, okay, this is an example of how we think it should be applied. But if you approve the code, we can make changes in these districts. I mean, in other words, you don't have to take the map unless, you don't take the map if you don't pass the code, right? It just all goes away. But if you pass the code, you don't have to take the map. Then we can go through the process of making the adjustments on the map.
Again, though, if we have the code with no map, then we can't apply the code.
Understand.
So then we have no zoning code.
So you basically have to do them at the same time.
So how long though, if they tomorrow they decide to pick it up and pass it at the end of the month just because they can, and they don't have a map, how long, basically it's up to us how long that process would take to get the map to them, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, we could do it in 2 meetings or something, right?
Technically, you could do it in one,
Yeah.
but I don't necessarily think that's the right thing to do,
Doing like we did with the code, doing 3 public hearings is, and if we wanted to schedule one as a evening time public hearing in between 2 regular meetings, we could actually probably get through it in 2 months.
Well, one thing we could do is, I'm hoping to be on the agenda for the next Assembly meeting and see if I could have more success with them, forcing them to come up with a schedule and then respond accordingly. Like if they're not going to take it up till December, then, that gives you guys more time to deal with the map if it seems like they're going to take it up at all. But I hesitate to have this long stretch between adoption of the code and adoption of the map. It would be nice if there was some sort of connection there.
Why can't we do it at the same time?
That's what I'm trying to do.
Yeah, right. I mean...
But it would require you to move now, so that you have the map approved through the Planning Commission by the time the Assembly's approving the code and the map. If you're going to do it simultaneously, they all have to be approved. You go through this whole process, and at the end, you have to have a map that's gone through 3 readings and a code that's gone through 3 readings of the Assembly, as well as gone through the Planning Commission.
But I agree with you what you said at first. I think if people agree with the general code, but maybe they have issues with how it's going to be implemented, I feel like almost it'd be easier to do the code and then the actual implementation, You know what I mean? People might agree with the code, but then how it's going to be implemented, maybe they have issues, and then it hangs up the whole thing.
That's what I'm afraid of, right,
So
precisely.
maybe it's good if we do stagger it, but closely, like, try to have it so that the zoning code gets approved, and then a month later, the map's ready and already, been vetted. We had 3 meetings. I know we don't have a schedule, so that's kind of asking a lot, but I feel like if it's staged like that, it might have less hang-ups.
Again, that was kind of the original thought, but then there was so much criticism about not having a map, and you guys kept asking me for a map,
I
so...
don't think there's a lot of real changes to the map from what our current zoning is. It's more terminology changes than anything else, with the exception of those few areas going into light industrial. There really isn't that much in the way it changes.
Well, that's what I kept telling the attorney, but she,
And so, I don't believe there would be that much opposition to the map.
It might even answer a few questions.
Yes, precisely. That's, because this is hard for people to visualize. It's hard for me to visualize, and I've read that code thing twice now, and I'm confused every time I get done with it. So most people aren't going to spend any time at all on that. They're going to look at the map, or they're going to say, okay, where's my lot? What am I now? That's how they're going to approach it. Where, I think if we just put this out and just say, look, here's the code, the assembly approves the code and the changes in it. We just say this is a model map, subject to change. And
Part of the process.
Part of the process. But then we can't, otherwise what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going through the whole process again of people saying, arguing about the code.
Well, I feel like that's what we were doing originally, and then what I heard back from you guys was we want to see a map.
Well, yeah, now we have a map, and this is how we would apply it.
Okay.
So that's good.
Is the consensus to wait until after the assembly approves the code then? Is that what I'm hearing?
Not for me.
Personally, no.
I think we should do the map.
Well,
Personally, what I'd like you to do is go to the assembly and see what their process is going to be and see how fast or slow they want to do it or not do it. And then...
I just need a consensus from all of you, though.
Yeah, no, I understand. I mean, I'm just expressing my own opinion right now, of course.
And it's also an election, huh? So is that going to kind of maybe...
Yeah, it'll be a different assembly between this month and next month, right?
We already did the public process for the code, and the only questions we had coming to us were the planning and zoning changes, the zoning changes. Seems to me we should get that map out there, calm everybody's fears, and just add a few more colors on your key, please.
It scrolls down, so you can actually see them on the regular screen, yeah.
I thought you had moved down and it stopped.
No, it goes all the way. It has all the colors.
Excellent.
Yeah, I agree with Sally. I think people will want a visual. I know you're looking at the map as a legal document, right? But I understand why it has to be a legal document. I get that part. But we need to have that presented the same time when the assembly is looking at the code. And then just explain that, this isn't the final map. Subject to approval of this is the starting point.
Plus, it states right on it, proposed and draft. It doesn't say final, so people will understand that when they look at it.
Well, yeah, obviously, because it hasn't gone through you.
And we do
have
have to be told.
Yeah.
And I would like the assembly to have a whack at it to see if they want to make any changes before we spend time and get people all worked up and excited about something, until they might want to just eliminate the whole light industrial part. They might not even want to have low or high density housing. They might just want to eliminate those whole parts from the code.
You're kind of saying two things. Is you want them to go through together, but you want to wait until the assembly picks it up? You know what I mean?
No. The assembly needs to have a picture to see, okay, this is the code, this is how we propose it. This is one way of how we're considering applying it, right? So they have a visual.
Yeah.
But us go ahead with our public hearings at the same time?
Then we wait for the assembly to go through the process and say, no, we don't like this part of the code, we don't like that part of the code, and if they eliminate that, then you're going to eliminate a couple of color codes on the map right away, and then it's going to be meaningless, because if they say, no, we don't like the idea of high-density housing, period. We're going to eliminate that from the code altogether. Then what happens to the map? Well, you get rid of that.
It would just go into a different color, right?
It goes in a different color. Or we don't like the concept of light industrial. We just want to stay industrial.
Yeah.
But your thought of us wasting our time is just if we have a public, commenting period at our next meeting. Well, that would be basically it, right?
Well, I think if we start getting comments now, it will probably help the process going through the Borough Assembly. So I really think we should start the process of going through the map, and it'll clarify things for people in the community and give people a chance to have their input and say, hey, I do like this or I don't like that.
And here's
that
why.
will also help with the Borough Assembly with what they're working on the parts of the text of the code. So I think it'd be a good idea to get started with public hearings on the map at our next meeting.
And definitely put the word propose and draft in there so people don't think it's the final.
Yeah, that's fair enough, but we just got to let people know that this is all meaningless if we don't pass the code.
Yeah.
Right. I mean,
This is a step.
What we're trying to do is get input at this point, and it will kind of also make things gel as far as what the code means if they can see the map. And that we're discussing what's going to be what in the map. It's nothing set in stone at this point, but we're at least starting to get, something that is, this is generally what's being thought of, and this is how it applies and how the code all transitions together and it works. I think that would answer a lot of questions and it'll make it easier for the process as far as Borough Assembly goes.
I don't have an issue with that. I just want to caution everybody, I've been on enough advisory boards, which essentially what we are right now is an advisory board in this process, where you get ahead of the political process and you just can't predict it, and my concern is that by putting this, by going into a process where we're going to start saying, okay, let's start doing this and this, we're going to get people excited again, like we did before when we talked about changing the code. And they're going to, I think that could torpedo the process, but I could be wrong. I'm all for public process, so.
I think we'll have the same two guys back here saying, oh, now it makes sense because I can see it.
Yeah, maybe, hopefully.
Yeah, we're just looking for consensus down here, so we could.
I agree with Chris who just said. So that sounds good to me. Have a public meeting.
I don't have a problem having a meeting. I just putting out a word of caution here.
I have to say, originally I was definitely in Dave's camp. That's when we started the process. That is definitely how I was thinking about it. Was let's no reason to get everybody upset or concerned when there's no reason to. I definitely was in that camp. One thing we could do is sort of split the difference in a way between all of you and let me present it to the Assembly. We could, instead of having 3 public hearings, Chris is right, there's not a lot of deviation from what currently exists. There's very little change, truly. And I did my best to try and maintain things in their corresponding districts. Except where I think we've either seen things that didn't make sense or the issues had come up. So instead of having the 3 public hearings, maybe we have 2, and then that'll shorten our process. It'll be easier to, get, we can be more or less right with the Assembly. My only concern about that is it gets a little bit confusing, I think, on the public end, having parallel processes going, Like, should I be talking to the Assembly about this, or should I be talking to the Planning Commission about this? And that's my concern about having you guys going simultaneously with the Assembly. So that was my only reasoning for starting you sooner than later. But we could, we could either do the parallel thing, or we could do the reverse, which is wait for the assembly to approve it. We'll extend the date when the code gets put into enforcement status until the map gets approved.
Or the third thing, what Chris suggested.
Which is
us get started now.
Right now and be ahead of the assembly.
Be ahead of the assembly.
I guess those are the three, right? Does that cover more or less the three options? Ahead of the assembly, parallel with the assembly, or after the assembly?
Do we have to decide now if we want to have 3 public hearings?
No.
Okay, so can we just schedule them for next time, see what the assembly says, and then make
But also see what the public.
No, I mean, as
response
far
is.
as the first one, we need to have enough time to give everyone in the borough notice, right?
Yeah.
So,
But that's for the public hearing, you mean?
yeah.
And that's-
So,
That's the part that I'm,
so.
yeah, that's the part I'm
Right
concerned.
now, and I'm still talking to the attorney about it, what she's saying is we have to notice everybody, right?
Right.
So, what we're thinking is a postcard or something like that, just FYI, your property is proposed for rezoning. She hasn't said exactly what the notice has to say, like, do we have to say from X to Y, or can we just say, for more information, blah, 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 look here, and you can see what it's being changed to. I agree with Dave. I think it'll cause a lot of unnecessary heartburn, because it's a scary thing when you don't really know what that means. And it could be more confusing.
Yes.
If we can get this map working though, and you give them the link to that, and then most people can check it on their own, that would alleviate half of it. I still think there'd be.
I think also in what you send out, explain that a lot of what is being changed is mostly just terminology. Because that's like the changing from single-family residential to low-density residential is basically the same code.
Yeah, but a lot of people are going to have questions. They're going to say, oh, does that mean somebody can put a travel trailer in their backyard next to me? I mean, this is going to open up a can of worms that you don't even want to,
We're going to have to open it anyway.
I understand that. I don't have any problem with opening it. We already opened it by revising the code, right?
Trying to.
Try to. But now the next step that I see in the process is the assembly has to weigh in on it. They haven't weighed in on it at all. We haven't had any guidance from them.
And it went to
We
them
haven't had-
how many months ago?
Yeah, we haven't had any communication from them as a board. They haven't said, yeah, keep on doing this, or this is a bad idea. We haven't had anything like that. And
I've
that's
had all of that, but anyway.
Yeah, at all. So my concern is, we send out to every property owner in Petersburg that we have a new zoning map. One, an assembly member is going to say, well, why haven't I looked at this first? I didn't approve this, So then right off the bat, we're going to be, if we want to get this thing past the assembly, we need to do some groundwork ourselves as a board to the assembly.
Well, it would have been nice if the assembly gave us some feedback. They've had it for several months.
Well, no, in their defense, they haven't.
They haven't had any feedback, or they haven't had it?
They haven't had the code to look at.
I thought it went to them in May.
No, it didn't.
It went to the borough
It went to the attorney.
So that's where it still is?
It just got out. Yeah, so they actually haven't had it presented to them.
Well, that makes me feel better.
Can I?
Yeah, no,
You're on
it
the
makes me
spot,
feel
Nancy.
worse, because I'm the one that had to spend all the time
Can I
with
put
it.
you on the
I'm not
spot?
the liaison for this outfit.
Well, no, you're on the assembly, so I'm just asking you as an assembly member, not speaking for the assembly.
I can't speak for the assembly.
No, I know, I'm not asking you to, but personally, as a public citizen, what do you think?
Well, my experience, I just made this note, by a constituency is he did not understand the zoning, what did you call it, Sally?
The rezoning, it's like
The document that we have not received yet.
Right.
the new planning and zoning
They
code.
don't understand that, they don't understand the zoning terminology, they don't understand the map.
Right.
So it's not just going to the assembly that gives you feedback, it's defining things to the
Right.
public.
Yeah, that's my concern too.
So in order to get feedback from the public that makes any sense, they need to understand what it is. And just because you can explain it to them doesn't mean they can understand it.
Yes, I agree with you there.
So, but I don't know, it needs to come to the assembly in an appropriate order.
Right.
I don't know what that order might be, whether you need to make decisions and send those to us, or whether we need to see them and then make decisions. Don't know.
Well, the current code doesn't allow for the assembly to adopt a change to the zoning without it coming from the planning commission and without you holding public hearings.
Right.
Yeah.
If they adopt the new code, we can put in a provision for initial adoption, so that it says, here's how we're going to adopt the initial map. And we can put that in right now. And so then we'll have a process for how we're going to adopt the map along with the code. And that could include, it has to go to the planning commission, or it doesn't need to include that it has to go to the planning commission, because ultimately it's the assembly that makes that decision.
I think if we start the process on the map and we start explaining to people that really there isn't a lot of changes to what is going on with the current code, that it would actually tamp things down and make it easier for the borough assembly.
I think I would have agreed with you until I've said that repeatedly through all of our hearings, and I don't think anyone actually believed me, So,
I think education...
and I still think they don't believe it.
Yeah.
So, and that might be the minority, but...
I think education is going to be the biggest thing on this, and if we just build this, whenever we decide to have a public hearing, as a question and answer, just an education, we start the meeting with explaining how, take the map up there and just explain it. I feel, I don't know, that'd be a majority of people's issues, is just not understanding what we're doing. If they understand what we're doing, they won't have an issue with it. But I think
if you go through like what you did, explain that really what we're doing is changing just some of the things that are, it's really just changing terminology on a lot of parts of the map, and that there are certain areas like going to the medium density is going to change and actually reduce some of the setbacks because the lot sizes are smaller and things of that nature. It will make sense to people. And I think that'll alleviate a lot of concerns. And they'll understand fairly simply what we're trying to do. Also, again, with the light industrial, instead of areas that are currently listed as industrial but are primarily being used as residential, make them go to light industrial would actually alleviate concerns rather than create more concerns. But, and I think if we did that and we start our public hearing that way, explaining what the changes are, why they're being made, it'll answer a lot of questions, and it should make things go a lot more streamlined for us.
Well, how about this for middle ground? Instead of having a formal public hearing, why don't we just call it an educational feedback, whatever you want to call it, on how the map would look if the code is adopted, and then go through the actual formal adoption procedure once the assembly adopts the code. And that's another way of doing it.
But I think we really want to have the map available once the code is adopted fairly rapidly for the borough assembly to go ahead and approve the map.
Of course.
So that way it's not, we've adopted this code, but we don't have a map for 6 months.
Well, we've already worked on this sort of thing for what?
2 years.
Year and a half now?
Yeah.
What are we talking about? Why rush it?
Also, Liz, could you maybe do, prior to the meeting or the hearing or whatever it's going to be, maybe do an interview with Joe on the radio so that people do hear that it's basically language changes and things like that, and just kind of cleaning up some sticky spots?
I'm guessing I can, and I'm guessing it'll probably come out of when it gets presented to the assembly, then there's an opportunity there to talk more about what it is and what's happening, and then
It might allay a few
we can attach the
fears.
draft map to it. You know, it's just a question of where we fit that in.
But I disagree with you, Sally. There are some pretty substantial changes in that code that people are going to have some major heartburn with. It's not just changes of terminology, you know, specifically the changes on the warehousing,
Rural residential.
rural residential. I mean, there's some controversial stuff in there. It's not just semantics that we changed there. It's a pretty substantial rewrite of how we're going to approach stuff in the future. And going from having, you know, a certain density area in a neighborhood to a higher density area, a lot of people are going to have issues with that. I mean, I like what we did. I mean, I agree with it, but I can't speak for the entire public, of course. And so I think it's going to be a lot more controversial than just, you know, just changes. So that's kind of why I kind of want to have the cover, or at least have the input of the assembly, if they do want to go through with those changes that we propose. I mean, we haven't just changed language in areas. We've made some pretty significant changes in how we're approaching it.
Yeah, but I think the code doesn't make sense without the map.
Oh, I agree. I mean,
And-
you just say, hey, this is, you know, here's the code. If you want to go and have higher density in the residential area, this is an example of how we apply it. If you approve the code, then guess what? Then we can go and get specific on how we're going to apply that to the current.
So
I get
I feel
concerned
like
that
it comes
people are
down
going
to
to say,
two
we
questions,
haven't had a
though.
chance to comment on this map yet.
Well, and then you just present the map as a,
Yeah, people are going to see it and they're going to say, this is the map. I think it's better to say, we're taking comments on the map now at the planning commission level.
okay, yeah, all
I
right.
think it comes down to two questions, kind of. It's like, do we want to decide that we're moving forward with the new zoning code, or do we want the council to weigh in? And then after we make that choice, it's kind of, do we want a public information, or do we actually want to have a public hearing? It kind of, that's like in my mind the two things.
Yeah.
And I agree with Dave, I think the council needs to weigh in on this point, because we've been doing this with the thought that they like the idea, but, yeah, if they drop it, then it's over. Oh. But I'd also be in favor of doing a public information hearing at our next meeting, and we, you know, anyone that's interested, we just do it, you know, in the paper, we just announce
I
it.
think we should do basically an information segment first. We talk about it, explain it. Liz goes through and does a presentation, and then afterwards, we have a public hearing to the extent we're taking comments at this point. We're not going to vote on anything. We're just taking comments from the public of what their concerns are and everything else, so we can start seeing what's going on. And I think it'll also help the Borough Assembly with their decisions as far as what the code is doing. If there's a lot of comments and people are not happy with what's going on, it'll give them some feedback. It'll also make things a little bit easier for them when they have their deliberations over the code. So that's what I see. But
I agree.
Yeah, well, I mean, I agree with that. So if we could do something where we don't have to have the level of a public hearing, we could call an information meeting, and we don't have to send out a postcard to every resident in Petersburg telling them that we're going to change their zoning, I'm all for that. And then we could do the actual official thing of the public hearing process. If that's the direction that the council wants to go, or the assembly wants to go, after they've actually had a whack at the code. Can we do that? Do we have to notify everybody like that?
I lost you somewhere in there, but at some point, we do have to notify everybody and do a public hearing.
Oh, I understand that,
Yeah.
but we don't have to send a postcard to every property owner in Petersburg telling them
There's a public
we have a
education.
proposed zoning change map. That'll get people really excited, trust me.
Yeah, we don't have to do that until such time as you want to approve the
Okay.
zoning map,
Well,
yeah.
I'm not sure it would be a bad thing to get people to come in and comment and hear what we have to say. If we set it up where we have that informational section first before anybody gets commenting. We just talk about this is what the changes are and this is why the changes are. Before we start having all the testimony, I think it'll solve a lot of problems. I don't think we should shy away from our job, which is to have that preliminary hearing process and start trying to get all the information pulled together so what we're sending to the Borough Assembly is something that people have already heard about, they understand it, and their fears have been alleviated to some degree. And I think, yeah, it's going to be a contentious process to begin with, but we shouldn't be shying away from that. I think that's kind of part of our job.
Mr. Chair?
Yeah.
May I speak? May I comment? As administration on this and getting the word out to people, I have a number of concerns. Number one being, we have a lot of people who have complained about not being notified for situations like this, even during the public hearings that we had, when you were voting on these. A couple of people said, well, I wasn't informed of this, even though the word got out. I have people tell me that they don't read the paper, they don't listen to the radio, they don't go on Facebook. A lot of people throw away mail that comes from the borough. It's a huge challenge to get people educated. And the other thing is if you're going to have a public information education thing, I think you ought to be prepared for a lot of commentary, because nobody's going to sit back and listen to this stuff and not comment on it.
Well, that's what I was saying. I was saying we should have...
It's going to be long.
It's going to be a long meeting.
And people, that's where the mailing comes in to every single person. You can't pick and choose, because by putting it in even though it's the public's responsibility to be an informed citizen, they have that fallback. I don't. So there's where the mailings would come in, and it is going to cause a stir, but at least everybody will have had it.
Yeah.
So that's my 2 cents. Thank you.
I just think if we can get the process started, and even if it takes a longer period of time, but I know we're going to have a lot of comments, and it's going to be a long meeting, but I think we should start it with the information, a presentation on what the changes are, so that people understand what we're talking about, and that maybe will cut our comments down to some degree, and then we're going to be having a lot of people testifying.
When you say get started, do you mean having a public information or a public hearing?
I think we should have a public information, and even if it's not a public hearing, accept public comments so we know what the feeling is from the public at that meeting. And then if we wanted to postpone doing the public hearing to later, or just go ahead and start it with a public hearing. I think we should start the ball rolling. And it's going to be a slow process. I just know that. But delaying it, I don't see is going to help us, and I think it might even make things harder for the Borough Assembly as far as passing the code. So.
I agree we should get it started, but I think that the Borough Council should, give us some directive. And so by just having a public information meeting, we get it started by getting information out there, but we don't get everyone fired up yet if it's not going to happen.
We're going to fire everybody up as soon as you send them a postcard telling them that you're going to change your...
We're not sending a postcard.
We're not doing that with information meeting.
Okay.
Yeah, with information, we're just saying this is what we're doing with the zoning code right now, just trying to inform.
Yeah, no.
And I agree, once we send out that postcard, then...
All I know is we're going to have a lot of comments.
But we should check with the council first to make sure that that's the direction they want to go, because I feel like if we fire everything up and the council doesn't, isn't on board with us, then we fired up something not too soon.
Okay, to sum up, if I got this right, so for your October meeting, I'll notice just as an agenda item, the proposed zoning map, right? And like a question and answer or something on proposed zoning map. And it would just be a regular meeting, like discussion item or something, not an action item, right? And I will try to get on the agenda for the next assembly meeting, and then they'll have a copy of the attorney vetted version of the code as well as the draft map.
Good.
And then, if possible, try to get a sense of when they want to consider the proposed code. And my guess is they're going to want to let it marinate for a little while just to give people an opportunity to look through it again. That's just my guess. And then in October, we can have that information and then make decisions about proceed with public education or do something different based on what we hear back from the assembly.
And the public.
And the public, yeah.
Yeah, then if we do, then we should just have a standalone meeting where all we're doing is just an evening meeting where all we're, doing is just talking about the map. So when people show up, they don't have to listen to all the other stuff we have to do. And then all they're here to do is just ask questions, and we can try and answer their questions and take their comments.
I would also propose, if we're going to do an informational meeting as our portion of our previous meeting, that we start out with that before the public comment period so that people have a chance to, we have the presentation and then they have a chance to have public comments. And then we move on with the rest of our meeting or whatever else we have to deal with.
Yeah, well, it's your prerogative to reorder the agenda as you will, so.
Yeah,
Just suggesting that way we can get that out of the way. So.
Will we get copies of the changes that have been made by the attorney?
You're going to get them after the assembly, so I have so much admin staff time. And so the assembly, we're going to make those first and then make them for you guys second. Sorry.
Okay. It's kind of hard to defend them if we don't know what they are.
No, I know. And I'll send you the link for the map.
Thanks.
Because even though I'm still adding stuff to it, it works online, so you can look at it.
So when are you thinking the Borough Assembly is going to take up this, or do you have any idea?
My guess is not immediately.
On the code?
Yeah,
okay.
That's my guess.
Okay.
That's my sense. I don't know for sure.
I'm just wondering if it's going to be like the next meeting, whenever that is, or a couple meetings out, or, just...
I have no idea. As I said, I'll try and get on their assembly just to present it to them.
Yeah.
And do another, I think I've done 3 presentations to them already on it, and this would be the 4th one, so...
Okay.
Do another presentation again, going through what it is and what we're doing, and have them the attorney version. But my guess is it won't be immediately.
Okay.
That's my guess, but I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah. All right, is there any other staff comments, commissioner comments?
No, for the next meeting, I've used the ferry twice this year, and both times, the first time it got canceled, and I had to change my schedule, and I just found out they're also changing my schedule, so I won't be here on Tuesday. I can call in.
On October 9th?
Yeah.
Okay.
I can call in, but I won't be here yet.
Are you going to be here?
Yep.
I'll be in town.
I'm a question mark as well.
I think so.
I leave next week, but I'm only gone for a week, so I'll be back.
All
right.
You want to reschedule it for a different day?
No,
No? Okay.
unless we don't have a quorum for sure. I hate to do that just because people make their plans based on
Yeah, that's fine.
public schedule.
No, I understand. I can call in, but that doesn't count.
We still need a
for
quorum, yeah. It doesn't help us on the quorum.
Yeah, I understand.
Maybe we could email Richard and see if he's going to be in town, and then,
He indicated he would be.
for October?
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So you'll have a quorum then?
Okay.
Sounds like so.
All right. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
So move. Second. Take your pick.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.